Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. With Autoscout being added to Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, there's been a lot of discussion about whether it's positive for the game and how it impacts players at different levels. For me though, the important question was always how good is it? If there's still a clear advantage to manual scouting, then I think it's a nice way to help new players focus on managing units and making strategic decisions until they're confident enough to add scouting to that at the same time. If it's equal to or better than manual scouting, then that's another issue entirely and is replacing a part of the game. In this video, I thought I'd put it to the test. Now before we look at auto scouting though, I want to take a look at some actual players with decent scouting to first establish a baseline of what good scouting looks like. To do that, I spectated 15 real players and ranked 1 vs 1 or 2 vs 2 Arabia. I only looked at players who were rated 1100 or higher since I wanted to be confident the players were actually scouting on their own. Anyone over that rating I think is likely strong enough they wouldn't rely on autoscout, and most even use sheep to help explore as well. After 8 minutes, I checked the percentage of the map scouted and adjusted the 2 vs 2 to the equivalent percentage on a 1 vs 1 map. At 8 minutes, I also made a note of how many of their starting age sheep they found, and here are the results. On average, in 8 minutes, the human players scouted around 31 or 32% of the map, though it ranged from 28 to 37. At the same time, 12 of the 15 players managed to find all 8 of their sheep, and no one found less than 6. Keep in mind this is a relatively small sample size, and those are above average players, so I won't generalize it to everyone, but I think it gives a decent baseline of what players can do with a bit of practice. So now let's see how that compares to having the computer scout for you. In 10 trials, the autoscout uncovered an average of 27% of the map, with a range of 24 to 30%. That's pretty solid, and while it does double back sometimes over the same areas, it's good about keeping the scout constantly moving. The downside though is it only found 5.6 sheep on average. In the worst case, I saw it only found 2. That's right, just 2 sheep in 8 minutes, though it did find all 8 in a couple of trials as well. Generally, the pattern I noticed was that the AI would do a loop around the town center and then head out looking for the enemy, regardless of how many sheep it found, which is a pretty big weakness compared to a human player. Where a human player might decide to do another pass to find their sheep or another boar, the AI obviously doesn't think like that. I also tracked the time it took to find the opponent's base, as after finding starting resources, that's the next important thing for the scout to do. As a very general rule, if you're going for any sort of feudal aggression, it'd be nice to find your opponent well before 10 minutes, ideally by more like 8 minutes. You want to have time to scout your opponent's resources and know what they're up to before your units arrive. In practice, it's normally not that hard for a human player to scout the enemy by that time. With that in mind, the average time it took the AI to find an enemy building was just under 9 minutes. That's actually not terrible, though it means about half the time it took longer than that. The longest I saw was a little over 12.5 minutes, which I think is too late finding your opponent for proper feudal age rushing. Just knowing it has the potential to take that long and how inconsistent it is about finding starting resources means I personally would keep it off during the early game. Remember, it doesn't have the intuition that a player would have of knowing how many sheep and boar you're looking for, as well as how many you've already found, but I think it goes even beyond that. There were times it found 1 sheep on its own and kept going, since of course the AI doesn't know they always come in pairs. Likewise, a human can guess where the opponent might be on the map, and use hints like seeing resources to know they're close, or likewise use cliffs, wolves, and relics as signs to know they're in the wrong spot, since those things generate further away from town centers. The AI doesn't understand any of that, and even when it finds the enemy town, it doesn't know to scout woodlines, gold, and berries. That said, if you're not planning to rush and have found your starting resources, I think Autoscout does a good job uncovering the map by 20 or 25 minutes. It really loves to check out the corners and work systematically outward, which is surprisingly non-random and makes it pretty efficient at getting 100% map coverage. One last thing though is to keep in mind this feature only applies to your starting scout and not all scouts that you make, which in a way makes that one unit especially valuable and important to keep alive. But that's just my take on auto scouting. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.